A warm spring evening enveloped the country hotel in a soft, relaxing air. After a long day of meetings, negotiations, and discussions of Texas development strategies, Donald Trump could finally afford a short rest. He arrived in the state a few days ago to meet with local officials and discuss key issues: economic development, infrastructure, border security. It was an important trip for him, because Texas has always been one of the key regions of the country, with a strong position in the economy and politics. During the day, he held a series of meetings with the governor, business leaders, and security officials. The conversations touched on the construction of new highways, the expansion of the oil industry, but the main issue was the border with Mexico. The problem of illegal migration, smuggling, the activities of Mexican drug cartels, all this remained in the spotlight. And Trump, as a person who has always paid special attention to the country's security, was determined to find effective solutions. After all the negotiations and press conferences, his team decided to stay in a quiet country hotel, away from the bustle of the city. This place was chosen specifically here they could relax, collect their thoughts before the next days of the visit. Trump, though known for his energy and activity, was feeling tired. But instead of staying in his room, he decided to go for a walk. The guards walked slightly behind, monitoring the situation but not interfering. The hotel was located on a huge territory with a beautiful landscaped park. The evening sun was sinking below the horizon, painting the sky in soft shades of orange and pink. Trump walked along the paved path, thinking about the meetings that still lay ahead. "Mr. President, maybe it's time to go back?" one of his aides asked cautiously. Trump waved his hand. "Not now. Fresh air is good for you." He liked the silence. It was a rarity in his life. But as soon as he turned the corner into a small grove, he froze. Directly in front of him, at the edge of the park path, a boy lay motionless. Trump immediately realized that something was wrong. He quickened his pace, then sat down next to the child. "Hey, man. Can you hear me?" The boy did not react. He was very pale, his clothes looked dirty, there were cuts on his sleeves, and his face was scratched. Trump quickly examined him and felt weak breathing. "Alive." He looked back at the guards. "Doctors urgently." Immediately. One of the security agents was already on the radio, calling for a medical team. But Trump couldn't wait. He himself carefully lifted the boy into his arms. He felt how light it was. Too light. The child did not open his eyes, but his lips trembled as if he was trying to say something. "Hush, boy, you're safe," Trump said, walking quickly back toward the hotel. When he entered the building with the child in his arms, all the employees froze. Usually, Trump was the one dictating the pace of events. He was in control of every situation. But now he looked tense, focused, but also genuinely worried. "Where are the doctors?" he asked loudly. One of the assistants was already running towards him. "They're ready. Room number 14, we've got everything ready." Trump did not hesitate. When he entered the room, the doctor was already there, laying out medical instruments. "On the bed, quickly," said the doctor, taking out a stethoscope. Trump carefully laid the boy down. The doctor quickly checked the pulse, pupils, and gave an injection. The boy trembled. Then, after a few seconds, his eyes slowly opened. Trump leaned closer. "Are you okay, son? What's your name?" The child blinked several times. "Where am I?" His voice was weak, but frightened. "You're safe," Trump said. "Who are you? What happened to you?" The boy was breathing heavily, trying to speak. I was kidnapped." Trump looked at the doctor, then at his security guards. "Stolen? By whom?" The boy coughed, then whispered hoarsely. "The Mexicans. They said that my father was their enemy. They wanted him to suffer." Trump froze. These words sounded like a clap of thunder. He understood that this story was much more complicated than just a child found in a park. Trump stood up, straightened up, and looked around at his team. "I need to know everything. Find out immediately who he is, who his parents are, and what gang is behind this." One of the agents nodded and left, already contacting analysts and intelligence agencies. Trump looked at the boy again. He was still weak, but now there was hope in his eyes. "You're under my protection now, son," Trump said firmly. "I promise no one will touch you again." The boy whispered in a weak voice. "Thank you?" Trump clenched his fist. He couldn't just let it go unnoticed. He knew that his trip to Texas now took on a whole new meaning. An uneasy silence reigned in the room where the boy was. Donald Trump stood at the head of the bed, watching intently as the doctor checked the baby. Although the boy looked weak and exhausted, he was alive. And that was already a victory. Trump took a deep breath, collecting his thoughts. Everything that had happened in the last half hour had been unexpected and strange. "How is he?" Trump asked the doctor. The man, having examined the patient, replied, "Exhaustion, dehydration, a few shallow cuts and bruises. No internal injuries. Looks like he hasn't eaten in days. But he'll be fine." Trump nodded. "He needs to eat. Bring him something light immediately." One of the assistants immediately came out, giving orders to the kitchen. Meanwhile, the boy slowly opened his eyes again. Trump, sitting down on a chair in front of him, spoke softly but confidently. "You are safe. No one will hurt you here. Tell me your name." The boy blinked, looked at Trump as if trying to figure out who was in front of him, and whispered, "Miguel." "Okay, Miguel. You have nothing to worry about. We will take care of you." The boy nodded weakly, but fear was still visible in his eyes. Trump knew he had to tread carefully. The boy had clearly been through something terrible, and any careless word could cause him to panic again. "Miguel, you said you were kidnapped? Who are these people?" The boy swallowed. "They were men, many men. They spoke Spanish. They were angry." His breathing quickened, but Trump placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "You're safe. Just tell me everything you remember." Miguel took a deep breath, then, looking away, began to speak. "I was at home, we had a lot of people. They were talking about something important. Then black cars arrived, people with guns burst into the house. They were screaming, beating." Trump frowned. "Were you at home? With your parents?" The boy shook his head. "Only with my mother. Dad was somewhere far away. He is rarely home. But everyone says that he is a very important person." "What is his name?" Miguel hesitated, but then said quietly, "Raul Castillo." Trump froze. The name seemed familiar to him. At this time, one of his assistants, who was standing by the wall, immediately opened his tablet and began to quickly search for information. After a few seconds, he raised his head and said, "Mr. President, Raul Castillo is one of the leaders of the Mexican cartels." Trump clenched his fists. "You are sure?" "Yes, sir. He is one of the most powerful drug lords in northern Mexico. His name has been in DA and FBI investigations for many years." Trump looked at the boy again. "Miguel, you said you were kidnapped? Why?" The boy lowered his head. "They said that my father was their enemy. They said that if he didn't do what they wanted, they would kill me." Trump gripped the armrests of his chair tightly. Now everything has become clear. The boy was caught in a crime war between Mexican cartels. He looked at his people. "We urgently need to find out who is behind the kidnapping." "We're already working on it, sir. We're contacting our agents at the FBI." Trump turned back to Miguel. "How did you escape?" The boy perked up a little. "They kept me in a small room. I heard them arguing with each other. Then someone started shooting. I don't know who, but I took advantage of the moment and ran out. I ran for a long time, then I saw your hotel. I hid in the park, but then I felt sick." Trump stood up, his face serious and determined. "We can't just leave this like this. These criminals are kidnapping children, threatening them, using them as a tool of pressure. This has to stop." He turned to his men. "Contact the FBI, the DA, and the governor of Texas. I want to know who these people are, where they are, and how far they have penetrated our borders." "It will be done, sir." Trump looked at the boy again. Miguel, I promise you, these people will not touch you again. The boy looked at him with wide eyes. Can you do this? Trump nodded. I am the President of the United States. And I will not allow children to suffer because of criminals. Trump's aides were already giving orders. Contact with intelligence agents had been established, and the best analysts and operatives were involved. But Trump knew this was just the beginning. The boy survived. But how many more children were in the hands of these people? He had to find out the truth. And, more importantly, to restore order. There was no time to think. Donald Trump stood in the center of a large hotel room, surrounded by his closest advisors, security personnel, and FBI agents who had arrived on short notice. A giant screen in the center of the room displayed maps, photos of suspects, and intelligence reports. The focus was on one question. Who is behind Miguel's kidnapping and what to do now? Trump looked at the boy, who was sitting in a chair, covered with a blanket. Despite the stress he had experienced, he seemed a little calmer. For the first time in days, he felt safe. But safety was an illusion as long as the criminals who had kidnapped him remained at large. Trump turned to his top national security advisor. What do we have? An FBI agent, a tall man in a suit with a slight southern accent, stepped forward. Mr. President, our sources confirm that the boy is indeed the son of Raul Castillo, one of Mexico's top drug lords. He heads the so-called Sombra cartel, one of the most violent groups operating along the border. Trump nodded, crossing his arms over his chest. And who are his enemies? The agent switched the slide on the screen. Castillo's opponents are the Nuevo Sangre cartel. They are trying to push him out of the drug and arms markets. These people stop at nothing. They kidnapped Miguel to put pressure on his father. Trump winced. So the child became a bargaining chip in a dirty war between cartels? Yes, sir. The hall froze for a moment. No one dared to say the obvious. These things happen all the time. It's just that this time it went to a new level. The boy ended up in the hands of the President of the United States himself. Trump looked at the map. How far have these people gone? Are they only operating in Mexico, or have they already penetrated the U.S.? The agent translated the slide. They are already here. Their drugs are coming across the border. Their people are working in Texas, California, Arizona. We know that some local officials may have been bribed. But there is little evidence yet. Trump narrowed his eyes. This is exactly what I have been saying all along. The borders must be closed and security must be strengthened. We cannot allow such people to operate on our territory. Then he turned to the agent. What are our capabilities? We can organize a raid and eliminate groups on our side of the border. But in Mexico. The agent paused. We cannot operate in Mexico. Trump frowned. So what, should we just sit and wait for these people to kidnap someone else? No, sir. We can work through connections with Mexican security forces. But... Trump raised an eyebrow. But what? The agent hesitated, then said, the Castillo cartel pays off a lot of Mexican officials. They might not want to protect him. Trump thought about it. At that moment, one of the assistants entered the hall. Mr. President, I received an unexpected call. From whom? The assistant looked slightly agitated. From Raul Castillo. He wants to talk to you. There was a deathly silence in the room. Trump nodded slowly. Connect it. A minute later, an image appeared on the screen. Raul Castillo. Dressed in an expensive black suit, with a cold, penetrating gaze. President Trump, good to see you. Trump chuckled. I don't think we have anything to be happy about, Castillo. Your son has just been rescued from people who want to destroy you. I know, and I am grateful. Castillo paused, then added, but I also know that now you will start hunting. Trump remained silent. So I propose a deal. Trump frowned. What other deal? You leave my business alone, and I help you destroy my enemies. I know what you need. Clean operation. I give you the location of Nuevo Sangre, and you, forget about me. There was tension in the room. Everyone was waiting to hear what Trump would say. He looked at the screen, then leaned closer to the camera. Do you really think you can dictate terms to me? Castillo smiled. You understand that politics is about compromises. You remove one threat but leave another. Trump shook his head slowly. You don't understand. There will be no threat. Neither from you nor from them. Castillo stopped smiling. What do you mean? Trump straightened up. I don't make deals with criminals. He paused, then added. Your empire will fall with them. Castillo tensed. You are making a mistake, President. No. You made a mistake when you allowed a child to be drawn into your war. He made a sign and the connection was cut off. Trump turned to his people. Prepare the operation. They think they are above the law. Let's show them that they are not. The FBI agent nodded. Let's get started, sir. Miguel, who was watching all this, looked at Trump with admiration. Are you really going to stop them? Trump nodded. I promise, Miguel. They won't kidnap anyone else. Now there was only one thing left to do: strike. Everything in the room resembled the headquarters of a military operation. Maps, satellite images, and tactical plans flashed on giant screens in front of Trump and his team. The FBI's best and most sophisticated intelligence agents were preparing to strike at the Mexican cartels that had kidnapped the boy. Trump stood in the center, arms crossed, listening intently to the reports. His face was serious and focused. This situation has long gone beyond the bounds of an ordinary criminal showdown. Now it was a question of the security of the entire country. And he wasn't going to wait. The FBI's top agent, a tall man with graying temples, nodded to his assistant. Operation Clean Border is ready to be executed. We know the exact location of both gangs. The first target is the Nuevo Sangre cartel based in Texas. The second is Raul Castillo's residence in Mexico. Trump narrowed his eyes. How soon can we start? Within 3 hours. The agent transferred the image to the screen. This is their base. An industrial warehouse in the suburbs of El Paso. We spotted about 30 armed men there. According to our data, this is where they managed Miguel's kidnapping. Trump nodded. And the Mexican side? The agent sighed heavily. It's more complicated. The Castillo cartel controls the entire city. We'll have to work with the Mexican secret services, and not all of them are clean. Trump grinned. I never trusted their system. But that doesn't mean we can't act. He turned to his national security advisor. Do we have leverage? The advisor nodded. We have already contacted the Mexican president. If they do not help us with the operation, we will cut off their funding. Trump nodded approvingly. Excellent. Let them know that they have no choice. 2 hours later, helicopters carrying Special Forces soldiers appeared in the skies above the El Paso suburbs. A column of armored vehicles was moving on the ground. The goal was clearly defined. Wipe the bandits' lair off the face of the earth. The commander of the communications group contacted headquarters. Let's get started. Everything happened in a flash. The first wave of attack is tear gas grenades. Then, the entrance was knocked down by a powerful battering ram. Inside the building there were screams, shots, and the sound of people running. But the special forces worked flawlessly. Every movement was precise and cool. In less than 15 minutes the building was completely cleared. As the fighters combed the premises, one of the agents noticed a locked room. There's something here. They knocked down the door. Inside is a dark, narrow room with mattresses on the floor. And in the corner there are 3 frightened children. Boys and girls, no older than 10 years old. They trembled, looking at the armed men with eyes full of horror. The agent immediately reported to headquarters. We found the children. I repeat, the hostages are there. Trump clenched his fists upon hearing this. What bastards! He looked at the FBI agent. I want these children to be completely safe. Now tell me what's wrong with Castillo. While the assault in El Paso was winding down, things were not going according to plan in Mexico. The Mexican intelligence team that was supposed to take part in the operation against Castillo suddenly refused to act. The group commander reported to headquarters. We received orders not to interfere. Trump narrowed his eyes. Who gave this order? One of the generals. We suspect that he works for the cartel. Trump was furious. That's why you can't rely on them. Damn sellout rats. He turned to his men. We can't wait. Launch the drone. A few minutes later, an NQ-9 Reaper drone appeared in the sky above Raul Castillo's estate. Target confirmed, sir. Drone ready to attack. Trump looked at the screen, which showed a luxurious estate surrounded by armed men. They made their choice. Fire. There was an explosion. Cameras showed half the building being blown apart in a wave of flames. The armed men began to run away in panic, but were immediately caught by second attacks. Within minutes, the estate was in ruins. Trump exhaled. That's what should be done to them. When the smoke cleared, the security services reported. Castillo has escaped, but his influence is destroyed. His men are either dead or scattered. We continue our pursuit. Trump nodded. Find him. And let him know he is no longer king. A few hours later, Trump approached Miguel. The boy was calm, but his eyes betrayed a storm of emotions. Miguel, your father, he's a bandit. Now you know it. The boy nodded. I know. But I don't want to be like him. Trump looked straight into his eyes. You can choose another path. It's up to you to decide who you become. Miguel thought about it. I just want to live normally. Without bandits. Without war. Trump smiled. Then you have already taken the first step. The operation was completed. The cartels suffered huge losses. But for Trump, this was more than just a political achievement. It was a victory over a system of fear where children were used as commodities. As he boarded the plane, preparing to leave Texas, he looked out at the horizon. He knew this was just the beginning. But he was ready to fight on. After the operation was completed, the air in the headquarters was still tensely vibrating. The operation against the cartels was successful. Several gang leaders are arrested. The Nuevo Sangre lair is destroyed. Raul Castillo's influence is undermined. But Trump did not feel satisfied. He sat in his chair at the hotel, listening to the latest reports. On the table in front of him was a map dotted with red dots, places where Mexican gangs were operating. This was just the beginning. But while he was thinking about the next step, there was one more unresolved issue. Miguel. The boy was sitting in the next room. He was eating a sandwich that had been brought to him and drinking warm tea. But even after a hot meal in comfort, he didn't look relaxed. Trump knew there was a storm raging inside the boy. He lost everything: his home, his family, his confidence in the future. Now he was alone. What's going to happen to him next? Trump asked his advisor. We can hand him over to social services. But there is one problem. Trump frowned. Which? The advisor sighed. Miguel is still the son of one of the most dangerous men in Mexico. If his father is alive, he may try to get him back. Or, conversely, the cartel may want to get rid of him so as not to leave a trace. Trump remained silent. He couldn't allow the boy to fall into the hands of criminals again. But you can't just leave it like that either. He stood up and walked into the room where Miguel was sitting. The boy looked up as Trump entered. How do you feel? Better, he answered quietly. Do you know what will happen to you now? Miguel shook his head. No. What? Trump sat down opposite him. They want to put you into foster care. That means they'll send you to a family or a shelter. But there's one problem: you're still in danger. The boy's eyes twitched. He was afraid of this answer. Will they find me? Maybe. But I won't let anything happen to you. Miguel clenched his fingers into a fist. I don't want to run away again. I want to live normally. Trump looked at him for a long time. He saw in the boy's eyes something he rarely saw in adults. Determination. Struggle. The desire not to be a victim. And then he had an idea. Do you want to stay in America? The boy nodded. Yes. Do you want no one to touch you? Yes. Trump exhaled. I'll take care of it. The next day, Trump met with immigration officials. This boy cannot go back to Mexico. He will stay here. I want him to be given protection. Sir, this is a complicated process. Trump looked at the official, and he fell silent. Make it stop being complicated. Meanwhile, the story of the boy's rescue has already spread across the news. Trump saved Mexican child from cartel's clutches. The U.S. president personally led the operation against criminal groups. Borders must be secure, Trump promises. On the streets of America, people were talking about this event. Some admired the fact that Trump did not abandon the boy, while others discussed how the border issue would now become even more acute. But the main thing is that his ratings skyrocketed. 2 days after the operation, Trump spoke to reporters. He stood behind the podium, his voice firm and confident. What happened in Texas is not just an incident. It is proof that our borders must be protected. Criminal groups believe that they can penetrate our territory, kidnap children, threaten us. But they are wrong. America will not allow its lands to become a crime zone. We will fight. We will close the borders. We will destroy the cartels. Journalists literally bombarded him with questions. What's wrong with the boy, Mr. President? Where is he now? Trump smiled. He is safe. Will he be deported to Mexico? Trump looked into the camera. No. This boy has seen the worst side of the criminal world. I will not let him go to hell again. He will stay in America. In the evening, after the press conference, Trump visited Miguel again. The boy sat by the window, looking at the night city. You were on TV, he said. Trump chuckled. And what do they say? That you saved me. Trump sat down next to him. I just did what I had to. Miguel was silent for a long time. Then he quietly asked, what if my father comes back for me? Trump looked at him seriously. If he tries to take you away, he will regret it. The boy nodded. You're not like other politicians. They just talk, and you do. Trump smiled. Remember this, Miguel. In this world, it's not what you say that matters. It's what you do. The boy looked at him thoughtfully. I don't know what will happen next. You are free to choose. No one decides for you now. Miguel was silent for a long time. And then he quietly but confidently said, I won't be like my father. Trump smiled. This is the right choice. Miguel's story spread throughout the country. His rescue became a symbol of the struggle. And Trump has proven once again that his words are not just promises. These are actions that change lives.